Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz multi-instrumentalist and educator Tom Tallitsch. In early April 2020, we caught up with him to talk about this new COVID-19 world. He also opened up about his brand new 2020 CD called 10. In addition to having his compositions and arrangements played by vocalists and musicians throughout New York and Philadelphia, his works have been performed by dancers as well. Enjoy.
You know, living, trying to get through the extraordinary time, the same boat we're all in here.
Yeah.
Where exactly in the world are you right now?
So I live now at this point, as of a couple of years ago, I live about halfway between New York and Philly. And before everything came down here, I was, I had one foot in both cities. So I would go up and play gigs and work up in New York, and then I'd cruise down to Philly and do the same thing. So we're really fortunate that, we're in a beautiful area here with a lot of trees and a lot of parks and a lot of space, kind of a little country, hilly type town. But New Jersey is really blown up. We have about 45,000 cases of this virus in New Jersey, and now it's sort of a community spread. They don't know, they're not able to trace how people are getting it. It's just in the community. So we're dug in. I'm teaching lessons online and doing classes and doing everything from home and trying to get out and see some sunshine when I can. So.
Yeah, I think that's the key to all of it. Getting outside, feeling like you're a regular human being. Because this is quite a thing. So. Well, hey, thanks for taking a minute out today. I hope this is a little bit of an oasis to talk about your music and what's going on and, everything in between.
Oh, man. It's I'm really grateful. This is like a diamond in the rough.
Good.
Everything is the focus of everything has changed, and I know everything will get back to normal at some point, but right now it's like, wow.
Yeah. It's just a scramble.
Yeah, or who knows maybe this is just a big reset.
Yeah, right. That's the thing too. There's so many of those perspectives out there of what this really is going to mean and how it will materialize when we can look in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Are you right in Kansas City, or are you out in the suburbs? Or are you out in the country?
We're in the suburbs. We actually just moved to the hometown of Pat Metheny in January in Lee Summit.
Oh wow!
Which is
beautiful.
It's a great city, and it's wild because it's kind of a metropolis of its own. It's kind of a mini Kansas City. So we got to see for a few months like how much was going on. So now it's like. Now that it's, pretty much a ghost town to a good degree, it's very strange. So, just trying to get our bearings straight.
Yeah, right.
Again, thanks for taking a minute out. I think I want to start off here. I really want to give people their due with what's going on with albums and all of that. Talk to me a little bit about 10. Talk to me about kind of the approach and how folks can get it, that kind of a thing.
Oh, thank you. Well, 10 is my most recent, and this album and my last album, which was released online, have been outside of. You see, I was recording with Origin Records, and then with Ponzatone. I have, I think, 5 albums with Ponzatone, and I decided to go on my own and record on my own, do everything, release it myself. This album 10, and then my last digital album Trio 18. They're on iTunes, and they're on my website tomtallitsch.com, and they're on all of the places that you could find digital music these days. And I wanted to just have full artistic control. Full financial control and everything else with these new albums. I have a new one coming out in the fall as well. That's in the can that I'm mixing now. not only with the music, with the recording, and with the compositions and everything else. I wanted to have control over the mixing, and the mastering, and it's been a neat project for me. It's challenging. Yeah, and so I came out with 10 this past fall, November 1st. You know, it's
right on. Well, let's get back into your lineage here. Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised, and kind of how jazz became a part of your life.
Well, I was born in Chicago and raised in Cleveland. I grew up in Cleveland. I don't know how my my poor parents. You know, we would go when I was in high school. My friends and I would drive down to the Bop Stop in Cleveland and Nighttown, all these little jazz clubs that were in Cleveland, and we would go down and hear the local players. And Joe Lovano, who's originally from Cleveland, would come into town, and I would be sure to go and hear him. My dad was a big fan of jazz, so we had a subscription series to the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, so we would hear them all the time and hear guys like Ken Peplowski come into town and play. And the Cleveland scene was small, but it was rich. And I just loved the Cleveland jazz scene when I was a kid. And then I left Cleveland and went to University of Cincinnati, down to that music program down there. And I haven't moved back to Cleveland. I moved from there to Philadelphia after that.
Wow, that's a pretty eclectic mix of city right there. Yeah, I remember talking to Mr. Ernie Krivda from Cleveland, and he really kind of gave me a portal inside the Cleveland jazz scene. So I'm always interested in like Midwest jazz scenes. I know Kansas City has its lore, but it's always kind of fun to hear about other places in the Midwest.
Yeah, you know, they're totally overlooked on the East Coast, because New York and Boston, Philly are like their own jazz ecosystems, you know, so to speak. But I know Ernie Krivda really well. I took lessons from him all through my high school years, and would go to his house. And he was a great teacher. He was very patient. He took a lot of time, and he has such an interesting way of articulating, and such an interesting approach. His sound is totally different. He plays on a King Super 20, and like looking back, that was a really wild experience, taking lessons from him as opposed to somebody who is more of a mainstream, like a Philadelphia has Larry McKenna, you know, who sounds like Stan Getz and Sonny Stitt. Ernie Krivda is just like totally different.
Yeah, without a doubt, he was very cool. So talk to me a little bit about becoming a professional musician. Just like, how did that all kind of come about for you? Was it an easy process? Did you always want to be a professional musician?
Yeah, I think I always did. Yeah, from maybe my early teen years, that was what I had in mind. And I didn't like school. You know, I didn't like doing the work. I idolized the jazz musicians. That's all I wanted to do. And like I said, went to school for music. And then my dad, you know, it was really hard for me at the time. My father said, "Well, if this is what you want to do, you know, you're on your own." And at the time, it was really painful. But looking back, it really helped me so much. I didn't have a safety net. I'm sure I could have gone back and said, "Okay, you know, I'm really desperate here. I need help." But through my 20s, I was just poor. And I didn't have anything else to fall back on, so I'd hustle, play every gig I could get, and just get buried by some of these older guys, and
Yeah.
playing.
Sure.
And looking back, I'm glad I didn't. I did not have something to fall back on because, you know, it really forced me to push and push and push and treat it like a business. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the first live jazz show you saw that made you think, man, this is what I want to do with my life?
I remember going back to the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, that big band there, listening to Joe Lovano playing with the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. That was when I first announced where I said, oh my Lord, you know, this is unbelievable. Just so, we all know Joe Lovano. He's so strong and so amazing. And for me as a kid, he looked so cool up there. You know, he's wearing a hat. His tenor sound was so huge. And then not too long after that, hearing a young Chris Potter, you know, Potter in his early 20s, just blew my mind. You know, the stuff that he could do on that.
Say, if tonight you have a dream and you run into your younger self around the time that you started playing music, and you could give yourself a bit of advice from all the wisdom you've gained over the years, what would it be?
I think it would be to work hard, but not worry so much. My younger self was such a worrier. Am I doing this right? Is the thing that I'm doing right now the right thing for me? You know, 6 months or a year from now. Kind of overthinking everything too much. If I could go back in my early 20s, I would have just practiced, made the scene every night. Just went out, made the scene. Don't worry. You know, somehow I had enough money to eat. I'm still here. You know, and pay the rent.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good lesson for all of us. You know, this too shall pass. You know, when we look at our younger selves.
Yeah, without a doubt. So let me ask you this, just very simply. What do you like best about being a musician?
Well, I like being self-employed. You know, I haven't had even though I teach at a handful of private schools, I haven't had a W-2 since year 2000. So I'm just, I love being self-employed. You know, with the good and the bad. You know, that's being on my own and being my own boss, and I love being creative. You know, I live for that. And now that we're not performing, everybody's sort of on hold, trying to find other musical outlets on my own to be creative. Yeah, but definitely being my own boss, on my own. Yeah.
Well, let me kind of extend that a little further and ask, over your career, you played a lot of live shows. Was there a show that was magical? You got off stage and you thought, wow, that's never going to happen again. That was something very unique.
Well, there have been a lot of really, really good shows, but the very first one that comes to my mind is maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think about 3 years ago, I had this gig at the 55 Bar, which is on Christopher Street in Greenwich Village. And it was probably my most electric gig that I ever had in New York. And I don't mean like electric guitars. The place was just on fire. It was packed, and the band was so smoking, and everybody in the band was just, it was so good. It was Dan Monahan on drums, and Brian Charette was playing Fender Rhodes instead of Hammond B3. And I had a quintet with myself and Nick Hempton on the alto, and I think it was David Gibson on trombone, and it was probably the most burning gig. And then probably following those, all these gigs that I did with Rudy Royston, sort of driving that whole thing, playing drums in back of us. It was like so strong. The interesting thing about these New York gigs is that every single one of them was a highlight of my career. Looking at them, I mean, there were some tough like functional wedding gigs and hotel gigs and stuff like that, but those jazz club gigs were just so burning with these guys. That 55 bar one really sticks out, though.
Right on. So, the whole COVID-19 thing's going to pass. We're going to get back to our regular lives. And, of course, jazz, as we know it right now, is totally silent. So my question to you is this. Whenever the music comes back to life and everybody gets to go back, whether it's fans or musicians, all of us alike, what revelations do you hope that we get from this experience? What do you hope we come back into the world with after this?
Well, my wife and I have talked about it quite a bit. We think that the music is going to change a little bit, and I'm not sure where that's going to go. But when you look at every major catastrophe or challenge that this country has gone through, the music has changed, whether it's going from the swing era to bebop during World War II, or the rock music that came out of the Vietnam era. I'm wondering where the music is going to land after this, because a lot of people are DIY right now. They're doing everything at home, or they're collaborating. So I think that's what's going to happen. People will really dig. I think this, unfortunately, my gut feeling is that this may last a while. So I think people are really going to dig deep into what they value, and they'll experiment. And we'll see where that lands musically. I think once restaurants and clubs open, there will be a mad scramble to get to get gigs, and that'll be interesting. But musically, I'm really looking forward to hearing what'll happen. And I know I'm trying some different stuff. I'm doing a collaboration with a tabla player.
Oh, cool.
So like different things like that I wouldn't necessarily have focused on if I was just in the grind with gigs and, writing charts for quintet gigs or sextet gigs or whatever.
Talk just in a generic way. Why do you love jazz?
Oh man, I love how free it is. Like the first person I thought of was Keith Jarrett. Just it can go anywhere. And I love the spiritual side of it. The spiritual side, the meditative side when I'm improvising. I love the sounds. The acoustic instruments. I love the soul of it. So many things. I just love music in general. And jazz is really just moves me the most.
Yeah.
I think especially those 60s recordings like the Horace Silver bands and the John Coltrane quartet, all the impulse stuff, all that stuff just moves me so much. It's a tough question to answer, when it's so personal and emotional.
Well, you answered it, and I got one more tough one for you. This is my final one. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Oh, well, I'm trying to be a nicer guy than I used to be. I think, well, I'll break it down into two things. Who I want to be is I want to be a person who's of service to others. I want to be helpful. I want to try to be an example, and I'd like to see myself as being those things, but sometimes I'm not. I don't hit the mark, and not just in this crisis that we're in right now, but just in general. It seems like I get the most when I'm giving the most, and it's easy to forget that. When I come to my gigs and when I come to my lessons from a perspective of service, when I'm being of service to these students, or what can I give to the audience, it seems like it all is good. But when I go into what can I take from this, that's when it is when it falls short. So I'd like to say that that's where I'm at. It's depending upon the day. I'm better than some days. I'm better. Some days I'm worse. And hopefully my wife and family would say the same thing. Hopefully my friends would say the same thing.
Well, Tom, hey, thank you for taking some time out today to talk with me. It's a pretty extraordinary time in our human history, so I appreciate the talk about music and everything in between. So thank you. Stay safe. I appreciate it.
Joe, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed reading through your blog and going through your YouTube and your iTunes. It's totally awesome. All of those things. I took some time and I was reading and listening, and you're doing a really great thing. We need more.
Thank you, man.
Like
I appreciate that.
This is awesome. So it means a lot that you had me on.
Yeah, without a doubt. And
thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Philadelphia, New Jersey, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Tom for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.